All right, it's time for another episode of I Hate Real Estate, and it's going to be one of my favorites because I have a good friend on the show, not you, Kendel. Welcome to our guest, Mr. Chris White, and again to you, Mr. Kendel Grooms. How you doing? Welcome?
Yeah.
Welcome to the show?
Yeah.
Have you guys have met before, right?
I don't know if we have or not. We may have.
Yeah, they haven't met, which means that Chris has not violated the law in any way related
he
to
took
real
pictures
estate.
of my house, but I don't think I was there while he did it.
Is it weird for you to know that this man has been in your house?
Both of them, the last two.
Yeah.
No.
So Chris has been the photographer actually for my entire real estate profession. There are probably 5 to 7 homes that you were either not available because you're like the most popular photograph person in our market, or because I was like, this house does not need to be photographed to that level or degree
I don't
of
want to
detail.
give Chris my entire commission check on this $100,000.
No. Well, this is the big thing about it. So pictures can change everything. And if you have just tuned in, the name of this episode is actually called Photo Magic. Poof, there goes all your money. Yeah. And the reason why is because photographs can change everything about not just the way the property is advertised, but also about the assumptions that you make as a buyer when you're doing it. So let's start out real quick and just find out a little bit about our friend. How did you get into real estate photography and create this massive reputation you have here in Central Arkansas?
Well, my first job out of college was as the creative director for Carleck's marketing department.
Nice. So you cried like a baby the first few years after college.
Exactly. So I think when they moved into Arkansas, they had like one office and like 25 agents. And I was in charge of helping them kind of establish their branding, their marketing. I taught photography classes for agents.
That's amazing.
In fact, a lot of their recruiting tools and marketing pieces they still use today. I designed like 20 years ago.
Wow.
So right out of college, I started doing that. And then I was there from probably 2003 to 2008, right when the market went down in 2008. And I went out. I got a background in web design, digital marketing, SEO,
all the
graphics.
Important stuff right now.
And so I went around to multiple other different companies, kind of in different, capacities, worked with them. And I had taken real estate photography for so long for some of these agents that when I left there, they're like, hey, can you still take my photos, And so between after hours and lunch breaks and stuff, I would still shoot for agents like on the side. And it got to be probably in the last 5 years, all of these boutique real estate companies started popping up left and right. Mm-hmm. And the franchises weren't as popular as they used to be.
This is really cool for me to hear because I really thought that he busted in I knew we were at the same time sort of like going for that independent.
No, absolutely.
You were always
probably right when
to
you got into real estate is right when I went into photography full time.
Explains the success. I mean, basically.
Because you just put me on the map. But
you put my listings on the map, bro. They're not selling without your photos.
But I just started I was turning down more money. I can't go take your photos because I'm over here at my job making less money full time.
Yeah, and having less fun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it was like 1 week. I think I'd turned down more in a week than I made in a whole month, which, of course, you got to say, all right, am I going to do that all year long? Or is that just
especially after you see 8 and 9, too, because you're like, oh, well, this can change in an instant.
So it's kind of like that. Do I jump in full time? Do I not? And it just got to the point where it's like, all right, there's enough boutique real estate, enough agents that were reaching out to me. I was like, I got at least a steady clientele base. And then as soon as I did, man, I said, if I'm making so much money and doing so well at helping these other companies succeed, I was like, why don't I just take that and do it my own? I already know how to do that. I already know how to do web design. I already know how to do digital marketing, social media. And so I just went and just treated that like a business. Because there's a lot of good photographers in Little Rock, but none of them were actually treating it like a company. It was like something on the side. It was a good side hustle.
But you niched it so well too, because I know you've taken other photos, like other types of photography in generally in the past, and I've seen you take great pictures of your kids. But the point is, you're known as the real estate photographer now. Like for me, when someone says, who takes your pictures? 3Wire. I don't even think about it. So, and that's where a lot of agents are. So that's good timing, and you busted in and made a lot of good relationships.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, everybody loves Chris. He's the one person you can have on your show that it's nobody hates this guy.
Right.
Except for when he goes, I will say that you're the Barrett Moon. When he's the guy and I have the listing and Barrett Moon is the inspector, I hate it. When my buyers photographers have him, it's great, but I know he's going to tear my listing apart, you know?
Right.
And it's kind of like with you too. When I have a bad house, I'm not calling you because I don't want your wide angle lens on my shaky foundation.
I don't want to.
He told us a story before the show started, before we started recording, about the dirt floor and stuff like that. Or people that are hoarders that expect you to take good pictures of their house.
Yeah.
Well, and so let's jump right into then to the legality, because there's so many things we can cover on this, and we're going to kind of run the gamut on all the things real estate photography. So especially if you're an agent interested in taking your own photos, listen to the rest of this episode because you'll change your mind.
Yeah.
But Kendel, go ahead. I sent you some information last night. We've decided to change Kendall's target. He's not looking for real estate clients anymore. He's looking for photographers who have been violated.
Breaches, yeah. No, Jamie sent me an interesting article about a pending case. Where was this out of? I don't remember seeing.
I think it's like in California.
Yeah,
but
this guy's in California, but I don't know where the case filed. It's probably in federal court in California because he sued our friends at Zillow.
Oh, it's our favorite people. We love Zillow. If you're feeling Zillow today, I'm sorry.
Yeah. But anyway, Zillow's getting sued, so.
Whoop, whoop, ding, ding.
They apparently have access to certain documents and photographs that are in the public domain and for other places where they have licensed the use of photos, but according to this lawsuit, they do not have a license to utilize the multiple listing service, the MLS. And all the MLS photos that are on there are obviously copyrighted through the MLS and the photographers that took them. And this photographer has had allegedly 543 of his image directly pulled off the MLS and used by Zillow on their website where they have property listings and other things.
Oh, and wait, get your calculator because he's about to tell you how much that costs.
The article references, and I've done a little research on it, so I'm not sure that this number is definitely inflated, but they've alleged that there are 543 photos that are each an independent document of their own for where Zillow has infringed upon their copyright, their actual copyright rights, and that the statute says that since it's willful and they knew they didn't have a license to utilize those from the MLS, it's $150,000 per photo in damages for a total of $81,450,000.
Started from the bottom, now we're here.
I would not shoot photos ever again.
So,
I'm selling them all to Zillow.
However, I finished
here.
reading the article and I was like, wow, I need to get into that business.
Yeah.
Right?
But
So if anyone's looking for representation and your photos have been snaked by Zillow, Kendall's available for representation. But moving on.
Yeah.
But the end of it talks about how Zillow has been in similar trouble before for this. Of course they have.
They
don't learn their lesson. Exactly.
Exactly.
My 9-year-old would say jinx. But it says they've paid out over $4 million in a recent case where they wrongfully used 28,125 photos. So obviously 28,125 is a whole lot more than 543.
Listen.
And $4 million is a whole lot less than $81 million.
Watch this. My experience in sales tells me, you guys, that, and you can tell me if it's legal, but what we should do probably is take some of your photos and let's go file our own lawsuit. And what I've understood about the market is if you just come right underneath that number, you know, that they're paying out on the other cases, you just come in there and just boom and make yourself available.
We'll give you a deal.
We'll give you a deal. Hey, you're paying $150,000 to him. I'll take $125.
Right.
And I'm only going to claim it on 200 pictures.
Yeah.
Well, this is why I asked you before the show started about how many photos the average house has. And I think you said
He's
it's usually 30, at least it's published.
Yeah.
You probably take many more at each house and then you select the best of the group that you take. I don't exactly know how it works, but I read the statute, the squiggly line.
Squiggly line, here we go.
Cited in this article, and it indicates at the end of it that it says, for the purposes of this subsection, all of the parts of a compilation or derivative work constitute one work. So I think what that's saying is that if you take 30 photos of my house, that's one copyright infringement if you use even all 30. I could be wrong. Right. I've never done this before, but that's what it looks like. And so if we break that down, that's roughly
to learn.
But that's I was about to say,
for a small nominal fee of.
I would say Carol
But
Dweck would be proud of you. You
that
don't have
lines
a
up
fixed mindset.
with a settlement of 28,000 photos for $4 million. Is that if it's housing photos, you could very well that reduced down. Then they probably settled the case for a lower number. But if you take 543 photos, divide it by 30, you get about 13 and a half. So I rounded up 14 houses, still $2 million, $3 million.
Yeah, I mean, you could retire for a couple years anyways.
Right. Yeah.
But till I get busier again. But what's funny
Very
about...
interesting. Have you ever had anybody steal your work?
I was about to say, let's go ahead and
Yes,
investigate.
right.
Yeah,
That's
so let's
that
talk
is
about...
true.
And you don't have to name names on this show. We hate real estate, but we don't hate the people that cause the problem. So we try to not use their names. But if you have a story or has anybody ever stolen your photos, or have you ever been scrolling online and being like, wait, I took that photo, but it's on Zillow, or,
Yes. The answer is yes. The short answer is yes. So when I shoot for Probably 30 different real estate companies and close to 200 different agents.
Shop for at least 3 companies that I've worked for,
Yes.
like for me.
So I shoot all across Central Arkansas, basically mainly Central Arkansas, a couple in Hot Springs, several in Conway. And so I was shooting for an agent. The good thing is I developed good relationships with everybody I shoot for, and they know my work because I like to help promote other either agents, builders, whatever. So every time I load stuff online, I like to brag on the houses and whoever's either building them or selling them. So it helps me get more exposure. It helps them get more exposure. I guess
You're also like really fun to be around. I told everybody before you walked in, I'm like,
photography puns like
Yeah.
exposure. And,
Yeah.
I know, right? He's trying to be like me.
I know he is.
But it's funny though, because just disclaimer: if you haven't met this guy and you're in Central Arkansas,
Right.
this is who should be taking your pictures because he's fun.
So I get, what is it? Zig Ziglar says, help enough other people get what they want, you automatically
Get what you want.
So
I said that, not
so I
Zig
help
Ziglar.
try to set other people up for success there. So, but when I was shooting, I post everything online on my Facebook page or Instagram or whatever to get exposure for a lot of these people. And there was another photographer, I don't know who it was, but they had approached a real estate company out in Cabot. And he was trying to get business with them, but he had used my photos.
False advertisement. I took these pics.
Yeah. And one of the agents recognized it and said, hey, I've seen that, because at the time I was
I'm tagged in
sponsoring
that.
and promoting a lot of these and paying advertised money. So it had gone out to 30,000 people, 50,000 people across Central Arkansas, because I look at all the analytics on my page. And that was one of the bigger promotions that I did. And so a lot of people have seen those photos. So
He had a good reason to use them.
whoever it was didn't think that through thoroughly and used my photos as his marketing material to approach another company and said, hey, look what I can do. But
I mean, there's got to be a level of like, yes, that's frustrating, but there's also that like imitation is the greatest form of flattery kind of deal where you're like, oh, well, I mean, that's great, but I've
Right.
been building this business for
Yeah,
20 years.
yeah.
So if you could not.
so
That's just stupid.
When
That's
you're
just dumb because-
when you're that big
yes.
and have that much outreach or exposure, it's good and bad. People try to steal your stuff, but I guess it's good enough to where enough people know.
Hey, that's correct.
I know
yeah.
that this guy didn't take those photos. So
Well, there's a unique sort of edge to your photos too. It's called 3-wire, but the way that your photos come across, like when they hit my Facebook feed, I'm like, well, like this house looks
Right.
nice, even if it's not a nice house.
Right,
So that's
yeah,
there's
yeah.
some style to the photos, which I really like. But when you get into this, you start talking about people taking your work. You also have like agents that are competing. Like maybe I don't want you to like. Have you ever had agents like, oh, you use him, I'm not going to use him? Is there any of that or?
not really. Just because I think there in the past, not the last 2 years, but in the past there have been so many listings and not enough photographers.
Yep.
So the ratio from listings to photographers,
has certainly shifted.
yeah, I mean, it's just, there's probably 4 or 5 good photographers in Little Rock and there's a gajillion listings. So I don't think agents can be as picky
as they used. Yeah,
because they're wanting good photos and they need to list it and sell it. So they're not really as picky as who they use just because they're trying to get it off the market
Yeah.
and sold as quick as possible.
Well, I've learned from this market that photos can really change everything. And especially because like you've seen as well, these volatile markets create like insanity when it comes to the clients. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you overhear things too when you're shooting houses about like, yeah, this house that you're taking a picture of is already sold. And now
Right.
it's just a formality that you're
Right.
taking these pictures. And then people make decisions based on the photos that you take, which I'm sure makes you feel ultimately responsible for the decisions they make. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about this, it becomes very important because you are actually photographing the house. And so how this conversation actually or episode came to be was Chris called me the other day and he was like, hey, from an appraisal standpoint, why are photos even, how could they be better for appraisals when they're professional? And I'm immediately like, because you can tell a lot better things about the house with a wide angle lens. It's kind of like
yeah.
a person. You get them in a wide angle lens, you can see a lot more.
I had one of those. I had a nice camera and several lenses when we sold our first house when I lived back in Sherwood, and we did our own pictures and sold it for sale by owner, and we used the wide angle lens. You can make it look
Yeah.
really
Oh, yeah,
good.
We don't
absolutely.
really like to talk about that time in Kendall's
Right.
life because that was before he knew better. Anyways, nobody
She
should
doesn't
sell
like
for
that I sold my
disclaimer.
house for sale by owner. I'm a lawyer.
We don't sell for sale by owner. He's a lawyer.
Yeah.
Anyways, moving on.
Well, I mean, for the past, I think 5 years ago, photography for like the last 10, 15 years has been a marketing tool. How can I as an agent put myself in front of or be better than the next agent? And so use that a tool as your marketing arsenal. And it's over the last 5 years, it's gotten into video as well, and social media marketing, and 3D tours of your houses. And so there's a lot more tools coming out the pipe that agents can use to say, hey, I'm better than this agent because I have these tools available. And it wasn't until the last 2 years when the inventory went absolutely to basically nothing that I overheard an agent talking to one of the homeowners, and she said, I like to get professional photos of my houses, not necessarily because of the marketing, because I'll have this sold in an hour anyway, but it's more of the appraisal value. And it was kind of like one ear and out the other. And I was like, yeah. Wait, what? You know? And I, like 2 days later, I'm still thinking about this, and I'm like, well, who do I know that's a good appraiser, you know, or has a background or a decade worth of experience? I'll just reach out to Jamie and ask her.
Yeah. I was sure you were going to say somebody else.
I know.
What do you think of, how does it, because I know, you know, talk to me like I'm 5 here. The difference between an appraiser and a
agent?
No. Who goes in and looks at all the stuff?
Inspector. I was about to be like, there's a big difference.
We just talked
as
about
far
that.
as, because I know a lot of appraisers take their own photos sometimes. So what's the difference from having, or the advantage of having professional photos taken on an appraisal, and how does that affect the value of a home?
Yeah. So, and when he asked me this question, same thing. And when I'm like, that makes sense. Wait, what? And I like picked up the phone. I'm like, Chris, this is a great question. Let's have a conversation. But it really is like, it made me think, because we do take our own photos. Like when you go to appraise a house, you walk in and you're like front, side, you know, all these things. But the reason you're doing it reality wise is putting them in the report to display what you have inspected. And additionally for yourself, when you go back and look, was it asphalt street, concrete driveway, foundation, what kind of, hopefully you're also taking notes. Right. But the photos are just confirmation of what you saw and inspected. And I would think that when you're using a wide angle lens in professional photography, you can illuminate issues that might otherwise be hidden, and these defects that you can see. Even in a house I had you take pictures of the other day, you send me the pictures, I look at the back of the house, and this is the house that I'm like so proud of the crawl space, that I'm just like, what a crawl space. Let's have a dance. Yeah. I can stand in here. It's clean, dry. I love it. So, but I noticed when you sent the photos that it's like the water that had rushed, obviously it goes over the vent, because there's a discoloration between the two bricks. There's the red brick, and then there's the brick that has clearly had sediment and soil, you know, go by it when the water rushes by. Right. And so immediately my thought is, I've got to explain how has this been alleviated? What is in place to help this problem? Because I can see that that's an issue. Right. Now, if you are a brand new agent and you look at that, maybe you don't see it. But if you're an appraiser and your job is to objectively and impartially value a property, you all of a sudden have more reason to investigate whether or not that crawl space has been infiltrated by water, whether moisture has been involved, because you have evidence. So it also opens up, though, for me, it's like Pandora's box. Like maybe I don't want to know all of that, because then I have to go further, and then I become Liability Island, and I have all these different, like, we're playing a game. I'm on Liability Island. And I have to call Kendel and be like, you know, how much do I know or not know? Because at that point, I might know more even than my homeowner. Does my homeowner know that? Are they aware that the photos are going to allude to that kind of issue? So that's my first thought. But then also when you talk about market value, people are shopping for homes now 100% online.
Right.
So it's what you talked about, digital tour, the walkthrough, the pictures, and that is all they get to make the decision on. So I would think that that's going to play a major role, how you photograph it.
As an appraiser, do you actually go look at the listing online before you go to a property?
So all of it, you're supposed to, yeah, because the first thing you do is you sit down and
see photos there as well if they're
there.
Professional photos, and that may or may not affect the price. It probably shouldn't, but...
Well, and it's like this. So they used to not let us take comparable photos. Well, they always make us take comparable photos out in the field, but you'd have a lot of appraisers drop an MLS photo and be like, oh, I drove by and a person was outside. Like, I'm going to be straight, okay? Right. Some of you were never taking those comp pictures. You know? Just be real. I was an intern for like 6 of you, and you are copy and pasting from Carmel's. Okay, so woo-woo. I won't tell. I'll tell you.
Now it's public.
I know, but I'm saying I'm telling you in private. But long story short, I'm not. They weren't taking those photos. Right. They were snapping them out of Carmel's. And the point is, if you drive by that house and it has burned down and you're using it as a comparable, like that's a problem. So it became a very important piece of the appraisal process to take active comparable photos on site day of inspection. But same thing here. What if you can't take a picture? What if there's a person in the house? What if there's some sort of violation? Because that comes up with fair housing. Now all of a sudden you've got like pictures of people and pictures of their items, and then does that bring some sort of level of impartiality, objectivity being affected in the appraisal? You see what I mean? So it's like this picture thing brings up a lot more than could we use photos for appraisal? Well, yeah, but you could also ruin the whole deal that way, you know?
Yep.
Wasn't there a recent case where this happened, where the appraisal was like the pictures from the appraisal they ended up filing a fair housing lawsuit on because they said that their house was valued differently based on the pictures of the family that was in the house?
If there was, I'm not aware of it.
Okay, I'll send it to you. It was pretty wild.
What are the top things that will help an appraisal? Like, what are
from photo standpoint?
Help or hurt? Yeah, from a photo standpoint.
So from a photo standpoint, I would think the things that would help your appraisal would be having those accurate photos of site as well as the property. Because a lot of times when you have an issue pop up with a property, this is Kendall's favorite word, external obsolescence, you will a lot of times not know about external obsolescence because this is something that is on the external of the property. So it's like, is there a cemetery next door to the house? Does that have some sort of...
Does it back up to the city's power grid?
Yeah.
You know?
There's a house on... There was
a
house...
logging operation 2 doors down.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and here's a big one for me. I didn't know this till I moved to Arkansas, and this is one of the reasons they make you get geographical competence as a real estate appraiser in every new market, is chicken houses have an incredibly pungent smell, and the odor is very far-reaching. And the first time I ever drove past I thought I was passing like a...
paper mill or something.
No, that would smell like sulfur or something. But this was more like... I was like, are they storing bodies? Like it's,
gotcha.
And I'm coming from Southern California, and I'm driving down these country wide roads. All of a sudden, the smell of death approaches.
They don't have chicken coops in Southern California.
And the first question I asked my parents, I'm like, how does that affect your property value? And they're like, what? I'm like, that's a big deal. And then they were wondering, like, took them 5
this is
years.
Normal. Yeah. Welcome to Arkansas.
So I didn't have a real estate license though back then, and just for a fun story to wrap that up, they ended up putting their house on the market. I ended up getting my license to sell it for them. They had the market 5 years. I sold it in 16 days because I priced it for that smell.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, when you're driving out here, you're gonna have a horrible time for 20 minutes.
Right. But what you just said is explanatory of what he's talking about as well with the photos and the external obsolescence. Is a lot of people are shopping online.
Yeah.
And there's transactions right now, especially with COVID ongoing, where people are buying houses that they never set foot in. And so it's very important from a valuation, inspection, and listing standpoint to have those photos of not just how pretty is my house, but what's around my house. Right.
Well, and then looking at just like, and this is a good point for you as a, like if you're an agent or a photographer or either one, when you're looking at these pictures, do I have every corner of the house? Like for me, when I look at pictures, I want to know that I have pictures of the foundation, the roof. Obviously, I'm not going to get HVAC inside, but I know what the condition of the HVAC machine is if I take the outside photo of the condenser, I think that's called. But anything that I get from the outside is going to tell me, does that roof have remaining economic life, or does it look like it needs to be inspected by somebody? I mean, you see enough properties after time that you can look at photos and say, great. On the opposite side, all these tools you mentioned, virtual staging and like all these photos, that you are being lied to online, and you could be buying a horrible house. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the editing magic, because poof, you changed Some Ugly Houses Pretty.
A lot of it, I try to, at least on my photos, I try to make it look as realistically accurate as possible. Because caramels will get you. I mean, if you try to do something, now I might change lighting, coloring, temperatures to make sure, because some people put some weird light bulbs in there.
Like it'll be the difference
and so
between
I
when
might
you
do
come
sky
home.
replacements. I was taking photos for an agent that you know, and I removed a stump from the front yard.
Nice.
Because it was just hideous.
Ooh.
And Carmel's reached out to this agent, and someone had gone by the house and said, yeah, there's a stump in the front yard. So I literally had to go back and retake it with a ugly stump in the front yard.
But that makes sense because
it's like,
you should have just taken a
so
close up.
I learned a lot
stump.
of lessons, even laying down sod.
Sitting on it with a for sale sign.
Yeah. I might do that. I might do it to more new construction builds and make it, if it's got
water bottles in the trash.
Well, because as a photographer, it doesn't matter. It's not going in caramels. We're going for portfolio style. But if it's a listing, I will ask them, if it's a new construction, it doesn't have sod, when are you laying that sod? And I will keep both versions just in case, because I don't want to have to make a second trip out there, And so I might give them good looking grass if it's going to be laid next week and they need to have it sold, versus the builder didn't plan on spending that money on the sod. They spent too much in the house type thing, And I've had that happen where we're just going to wait till someone makes an offer on it and then I'll put the sod in, and so.
You better check.
Have you been involved in a lawsuit yet?
No.
No.
Have you?
Sorry, I answered for you. He never wants to go.
Well, I'm just.
Unless there's Totino's.
I'm honestly shocked. I'm shocked that some agent hasn't gotten sued and pulled you in and said, well, I hired this person to take photos and they didn't take a photo of this part of the house like they were supposed to. It's not my fault. It's his fault. You didn't know about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was waiting on something like that to happen based on the conversation. Do you have contracts that you sign with these agents or anything? Or is it all just.
He will after he leaves here. But I'm just saying.
I mean, could you imagine if I signed a contract with every agent I shot
No,
for?
but it would be like I would sign a
crazy.
contract with you, blanket, just to indemnify.
and
What
just
is it
say,
called?
here, for the
Indemnify
next
somebody?
year, I'm going to be,
Yeah, because you can indemnify yourself to be like, I'm not the idiot. You're the agent. You're the one who's supposed to get it right.
Well, technically, I would take the photos for them, and they would have the opportunity to upload them or not.
That's true. But see, what's interesting about this too
I
is
guess,
that once,
I guess if you miss something, the agent should have better knowledge of the house than you do. And if there's something that they feel like was missed, they ought to tell you, we need a picture of this. This is not on here.
And I would go back and do that before they'd upload
still
it.
waiting
but
on
still,
that to
that goes
happen.
back to the case we talked about before. There was some conflicting agreement between the Real Estate Commission and the Supreme Court about whether or not the
I
due
know. I'm
diligence-
not saying it can't happen,
Well,
but
I'm just saying that what's interesting about this, though, for him,
it's a
is
matter
like,
of time before it happens.
Yeah.
Yes, somebody is, and especially in this market, because here's what's getting me when people are, because it's one thing to come here and buy a house, sight unseen, and then at least walk through it in your due diligence.
Right.
These people are waiving contingencies for appraisals and waiving their inspection right and purchasing it sight unseen. So, like, tell me that you've been to a house to photograph it and it's totally different.
Yeah.
Technically, I mean, I know you try to take it as real as possible.
I don't modify anything from the house standpoint.
Right. Okay.
Like, I will modify stuff that doesn't affect the house, like a sky replacement.
So you'll make
That's
it a
not-
blue sky instead of a thunderbolt
instead of
in the background.
Yeah.
instead of
It's
an
pouring down
overcast.
rain, but instead there's a sunshine.
100 yards that way.
Tornado.
I'm not changing anything on the house because that's changing basically the
qualities, right?
property.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I'll try to change something that's not the property.
Have you
Yeah.
ever changed like furniture color or anything that's not staying with the property?
No.
So that's a good question.
Like
though.
if
Wait,
someone
'cause
has
can
this
you
awful
remove-
pink couch in their living room, you're like, yeah, I'm going to make that tan.
No, not really, just because that wouldn't help it wouldn't matter either way.
Right.
Oh, it
So-
matters. It does.
It does.
I've run into people. I've helped family members shop for houses, and they're like, "These decorations are so ugly." I'm looking at the next one, and you're like, you realize none of that is going to be in this house when you move.
I
in
think
there.
that's where a lot of the virtual staging will come in because I would rather photograph an empty house and they can put whatever furniture they want in there. The downside is when they come in to look at it, it's not going to have furniture in there.
Yeah, but tell me you've
I don't
seen
know
some
this,
of this
but
virtual
I'm
staging.
guessing that an empty house sells much better than a house that has decorations
Yeah.
and people's furniture in it.
I think because
totally-
it's move-in ready.
Yeah.
They know that nothing's in there. They can move in right away.
So I think that this is the appraiser in me is like, no, that is market conditions. Because here's the deal. Right now, any house is going to sell. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if it's empty or not.
Agreed.
It's going to be like, what can I get the seller to sell me it for? But you're also talking about different price points. You have people who are so particular that they're in a price point where it's going to be the way they want it. And
Right.
if they're going to be able to buy it at that price point, they don't care. And so sometimes the furniture makes a big, huge difference for those people,
Right.
especially if they're the kind who like, ooh, look at that couch. I want to have that feeling. But then also you have people who are looking for a deal that are going to go in there. I'd rather have it move in ready. I'd rather have the ability to push a tenant in fast. So I think it comes down to market conditions and positioning of the
Yeah.
house. But will I pick a house based on its pictures to show a client over another house based on its pictures? 100%.
Yeah.
Like if I'm looking through the listings and I know my client's going to react better, I'm going to send them the pictures or the house that I think they want to see.
I think it's also in the past, in the last 5 years or so, that when you put virtual staging in there, you're selling a lifestyle. You're a single guy with a futon is all you own.
We're going to have to make this look a little better.
You got to
for
make
the-
this look like $1 million. It's an $800,000 house out in Chenal, and they're a doctor, and they're home like one day a week because
they have
they're
a
up at the
ping
hospital.
pong
You know what I'm
table
saying? Yeah, and
in the living
they
room.
got 2 pieces of furniture. You got to sell this like it looks awesome. On the flip side, a lot of these out-of-state buyers, they don't care what it looks like, and especially people moving from California or whatever. A lot of these investors are snatching up these mid-price range houses and just turning them into rentals. They're offering 10, 20, 30 grand above asking price and outbidding everybody because they know
It still blows my mind though, because they're doing it as an investment and they're
I
blowing
think
off
since
all the things that
January
make sure it's a
1st.
good
I know.
investment.
So
I know.
we're 23 days into
24.
Since January 1st. Technically, this is the 24th.
Right.
Day.
It comes the
if
squiggly
we're gonna
line.
be technical,
Right.
But I think I've already created like 6 LLCs from people out of state that are buying properties here this year.
Yeah. And I shoot for a lot of people that's their
That's interesting
clientele.
because I don't have 6 referral emails in my inbox. That's weird.
I don't think these people deal with agents.
Well, they're
No.
going to now. So here's just kidding. But here's the thing.
It's crazy.
because they're in a different price range.
I think 3 of them are from California. You just mentioned it.
And that's the thing. They're from a different price range. When my parents moved here, it was the craziest thing because we sold our house there and then they moved here and it was like they literally bought that house for 50% less than what we sold our house for in California for 16 acres versus a corner. Is a whole different thing. So these people are coming out here, and that's what's so important as an agent in this market to pay attention to, is you've got buying power coming into our market that you are not familiar with, and they will make decisions that if you do not tell them, at least as their fiduciary, hey, then you're going to end up in a lawsuit like that. But it comes down to when they're shopping by the photo, they need to be accurate photos, and they need to show the house in the best light, but be real.
And a lot of these agents, they're like, do you want to see the house before you buy it? Right? Nope. I mean, because they're looking to,
they're relying on your pictures, Chris, actually, so they're not
literally,
worried.
It's like I've seen enough all I can see. I don't need to see anything else.
I feel like we should give him his own indemnity clause
get
just so
that.
that he can be like,
I get that with
Safe.
with people that are buying for investment property,
Right.
and they will still have an inspection done.
Yeah.
But these people that are buying to move here and live in a house that are waiving inspection, waiving appraisal,
That's just
never
weird.
being in the house at all. You're going to move all your stuff into this house having never
Right.
seen it. It's just a matter of time before there are a swarm
Someone's
of
gonna get
lawsuits
burned.
cropping up.
oh yeah, someone's going to get burned by that. But that's because you should never, it's a buyer beware situation. You should never ever walk into a scenario with, okay, I'm definitely going to, nothing's going to go wrong. You should
Right.
always walk into it with everything's going to go wrong and be horrible, and then be surprised when it goes well. This is my life outlook
Right.
coming on the show. But seriously, when it comes down to buying a house sight unseen, what happens if somebody comes here, uses Chris's photos to purchase a home through their agent? Everything looks normal, disclosure is normal, then they move in the house, something terrible goes wrong, or there's a secret basement that was not photographed, that someone falls through a trap door and they break their leg and they come to Kendel and I'm going to sue them, and the agent says, it's not me. Chris took the photo.
Chris took a photo of the trap door. It's his fault.
Actually, Chris didn't know there was a trap door
He
because
didn't
maybe
step
the
on it
listing
and break
agent.
his leg.
Yeah.
Whatever hypothetical situation you need for this to work, I need someone to be suing him hypothetically, so that how does he get out of that as a photographer, or how does he protect himself?
That's a hard question because that
what I'm
issue
here for, ask the
that
hard
issue has
questions.
not arisen. I would think that given that circumstance, that you've taken a property as is and you had the opportunity,
You're
full
waiving all
opportunity,
that.
and you've waived all of that under Arkansas
But what
law,
if you
I
didn't?
believe.
What if you are 10-day, you're in your due diligence period, you've had the house inspected,
There
you
is no
close
due
it.
diligence period if you waive inspection.
Okay, but what if you don't? What I'm saying is you go in, you go through the transaction, maybe they repair one thing or another thing, and then they close, and there's some defect to the property that was not found on disclosure, and somehow they
Then they
cast
have
out fraud and they cast out all the other things, and it comes down no misrepresentation. It comes down to the fact that this was not a known material fact and it should have been photographed. Like, is there any way
then
for
I would say that that's on the inspector, not the person that was hired to take photos
See,
of
you're
the
safe.
house.
you're safe?
But nobody's safe from being sued. Whether it's all about liability. Your liability
real estate.
island.
Now what if the
Liability
inspector?
Island.
What if the inspector inspects the house, everything's good, and I remove the train yard from the back of the house?
What happens then? Then somebody
I
climbs
would
on
probably be
somebody
held
climbs
liable.
on the
You
train
could be,
yard
yeah.
and they hurt
be.
themselves.
Because it's not really a house, but that comes
But
back
it's
to
still
your
the sign
term.
actually comes back to
Yeah.
my term
I
because
think that's I think so, because at that point you've materially affected the fair market value of the house.
right.
And Jamie and I talk about fair market value all the time of what someone's willing to pay versus
Right.
what someone's willing to sell for.
Yeah.
And if there's a train yard in the back, the fair market value is obviously going to be less than
Now,
what's represented.
obviously, for record keeping purposes, I do not do that.
Now, if you
Yeah,
made some,
just
if you
for
made
the
some kind of
record.
disclosure along with the
Right.
photographs that was to be given to the person that says some of these photographs have been altered, you should see the property for yourself or ask questions, then
Right.
your liability goes away. But like that's why I asked you if you had anything in writing or any contracts or anything. It's just the lawyer in me.
I know. Well, that's the thing. I'm like, the lawyer in you has taught me to I need a form for everything. I actually have a disclosure now that when you want to be friends with me, you have to sign a 14-page document that won't let you take my name, image, or likeness.
She hasn't made me sign it yet.
Right. Yeah, it's because you're the one writing it. But the big thing that gets me about this, though, is let's get down to brass tacks about how it can affect you just on a lower level. Because me, as buying a house, I've been in some stinky houses that have some really, they need a coat of paint. The floors aren't fantastic. But Chris sends the pictures back, and it looks like it smells good. You know what I mean? It looks like there's probably not an issue.
The pictures look like it smells fantastic.
It's I wish they were scratch and sniff.
Right?
Could you imagine?
What does this property smell like? Because these photos
and that's what I'm saying. A photo can only tell you so much about the property.
Right.
Thank you. And that's the disclaimer that I'm trying to get
that's
to.
That's why I think the Supreme Court or any court in Arkansas would find that they'd waived it if they never went to the property and they were strictly relying on photographs. When a photograph cannot give you the same experience as you would have on site, because your photographs and the way you interpret a house through the art of taking a photograph is very much different than the way someone who's going to live there may observe the property themselves with their own eyes and their own senses.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have rose-colored glasses on, and neither does the real estate appraiser or the home inspector, so the home buyer is going to be in a lot better of a viewing position than the rest of us who know about facts and things. So yeah, I would say I have an interesting question for you, though, because I've been really excited about this. What's the craziest thing you've ever seen in someone's house? Because you have to go in people's houses when they're not home. And
he's probably seen some dungeons.
I've seen some crazy stuff. I just want to know what are we going to rate this podcast?
No, I mean we're protected. We'll just call the attorney if something goes wrong, right?
Yeah, and if we need to bleep anything out, we can.
Yeah,
so
we can beep it. Roman, get your beeper ready.
I've seen probably one of the funnest ones. I've seen toys that are left out.
Yeah. Oh, you mean like kids' toys?
Adult toys.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like, we have toys at my house too, but not that
it's really awkward when
they're home.
The buyer or the sellers are home and they're kind of walking you through and seeing if you need help with moving anything, and it's out on the bathroom counter, and they're like, let me take that. You did see nothing. And the agent's right there, and man, we had a fun time. I can tell.
Now we have another disclaimer design.
We had a fun time laughing at the situation.
Yes, you better clarify, because that will not be bleeped.
Literally just bit the microphone cracking up. No.
Yeah, so you get to see lots of stuff that's
But what about
you don't normally?
And here's the other part: is he talked about this a little bit before the show, but these people show up to take pictures, and there's 7 days of laundry. Give me 2 minutes.
Yeah. I show up 15 minutes early to a listing photo, and they're 2 weeks worth of cleaning needs to be done. You're like, I didn't think you were coming until 3. And I'm like, this isn't going to be cleaned up in 15 minutes. I hate to tell you, but
yeah, I don't know what
if it is, you need to start your own cleaning service because you can make a lot of money.
Oh my gosh, that makes me happy. Well, we've also covered some other things on the show in the past about snoopy salespeople. So we've had the people who go in your house and there's cameras on and the seller, is watching you.
Gotcha.
And then, so you've obviously been watched being taking photographs of people.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever just beep, talk to you while you're in there? Okay.
No. Yeah.
Don't take a photo of that.
Stay out of that room.
Yeah, battle of the cameras though.
Yeah. Who is that? Yeah.
So really though, what's the legality of this lawsuit? And what should someone in Chris's position, let's say you're a photographer and you move into a market, he's different because he's already experienced it and he's built his business. He knows how to protect himself now. But how do you go into this as a new photographer and make sure that you're protected from other people stealing your photos? And then also with the Zillow lawsuit, what's the legality of that? Are they going to be able to carry that through? And is it still pending?
Well, first question, we talked about this a little bit before the show started as well, of Chris has experience in SEO, and I know a lot of the search engine optimization. Mm-hmm. I know that a lot of the SEO stuff deals with metadata and tagging and things like that. And you said you do some of that with your photos, or with all of your photos. You run it through a batch and you can actually tag it. So if someone does use it, you can figure out whether you took the photo or not, or whether it was one of yours.
Right.
So, that's one way you can do it. There's other things. The different arts, especially the digital arts, have different ways to do stuff like that, I presume. I do some IT myself and have done some photography myself just for fun, but nothing like what you do.
Just when he sells his house for sale by owner because he's a trader. But anyway.
Yeah, I did not tag my photos.
It's okay. It was before we met. I forgive
all I did was print them on a piece of paper and stick them in a box.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too because that's what I use his pictures all the time, and I think to myself this is great content, and I'm not using him to sell a house. It'll be 3 years later, and I'll put superimpose myself in front of the house, and it's There's a lot of value in that, though, too, to get
Right.
that product from him and be able to say, I own this and I can use it as an agent moving forward. So it's pretty incredible work you do.
Yep.
I try.
And then this other case, I mean, Zillow, they're going to lose that.
I mean, they suck so bad. And
If
I
they
want
don't
them
have
to
a
lose.
licensing right to use the photos off of the MLS, which is copyrighted, they're going to lose that. It's just a matter of how the court interprets that statute.
I feel like everyone just needs to take a big look at Zillow and go, look, these are the people who claimed that they could value property and then filed bankruptcy and fired half their
Not
staff
like the
because they
contractor
couldn't
with
guess
Zillow or
it.
anything, are you?
No.
Right, okay.
No, because Zillow's busy stealing his photographs,
Yeah,
to which
yeah.
we're going to undercut the
It'll be
statute.
Let's go
remember?
find out if they've used your photographs.
Yeah, if
That's
you would
the
like to
mission.
undercut the statute and
I'm
claim
ready.
your class action lawsuit,
There's no
please reach
telling
out.
how many photos Zillow has of my stuff out there. I mean, because doesn't it MLS exports out
So
to
here's
Zillow?
the truth. There's
Like,
actually a
They
yes.
allege in this lawsuit that they didn't have a license right to use the MLS photographs. The
But-
photographer says that.
And that's the thing. They're probably right, but it depends probably on how their multiple list service works, because like you said with Carmel's, we have an incredibly good
Could be state by
multiple list
state.
service. Yes, because Central Arkansas multiple list service, there's actually a button that you push when you list the property. It's a secret real estate button, but when you push it, it's like, yes, I will allow these photos to go, and you can select yes or yes without the address, because the other thing is some people don't want their address published with the
Got
photo
it.
of the home. So when you
That
sign the
creates a lot
seller,
of problems too, because if you don't have a contract or anything in writing, there's nothing giving that real estate agent the authority to publish those photos any other places other than the MLS. There's no license given to the real estate agent. You could probably charge an extra fee to issue a license to somebody so that they could use it on other sites other than the MLS where it's intended to use. There's all kinds of things
Yeah.
there.
listen here, this is not a watch, but I'm pretending it is.
He's gonna
because
start charging you
can
more
say,
now.
No, you can say all that, but you know, a good friend of yours, or maybe a family member, protected all of us from this issue with the
Yeah.
exclusive right to sell agreement, which has a box on it prior to the MLS box, which you can't even get in the MLS unless you've executed the agreement, that says seller allows checkbox transfer of property and all photos to be translated to online. So you actually have to select
but
that
the-
option.
Yes, but the seller doesn't have the right to get rid of his copyright.
But the seller has the ability to allow the agent to use the property, and then he made an agreement with me that if I purchase them from him, then I can use them. So the agent is not doing anything wrong in the scenario. So maybe some of you guys need to clear up your agreements. But according to my MLS and the incredible forms created by the Arkansas Realty Association, and maybe one of your friends, has protected me.
Yeah.
So.
Well, maybe we're going to find out about that soon.
I guess legally I could go after it, but it's like at the end.
I like how
at
you went
the
like
end of
this
the
when you wanted
day,
to
I
go.
kind of want to retain my clients.
Yeah, that's one
Yeah.
thing too.
And so it's you're
if
in
it's
that
like
good
$81
faith
million,
type.
you're
like,
hey,
yeah.
I got you, you got me.
Well, and that's what we figure when
I want to
get.
keep shooting for you. So if I, go after you,
Yeah, when we-
legally and say, hey, you didn't use those photos without my permission, my clientele list is going to go down really quick.
Yeah. No, and
That's why we need
actually,
to go after Zillow for.
Yeah, exactly.
that's the only person
I'm
we
cool
don't.
with that.
That's the only person we hate in the real estate industry.
Yeah.
We hate Zillow.
Or
we
like
don't-
Realtor.com.
Are we all in
maybe.
agreement? Yes, good.
Okay, so the reason I hate, for another episode, we're going to talk about Realtor.com because now you just opened Pandora's box. Next week, tune in for an episode on how Realtor.com stole everything that belonged to realtors. Anyways,
I want to say with respect to photography, I've technically shopped for 2 houses. The first house I bought just kind of fell in our lap, and so we bought it. We didn't really look at any others. But the next two, my wife and I, we got cracked up with looking at people who took their own photos of their house. Yeah. Because we kind of had a rule when we first started shopping is when the whole online house shopping deal was just coming about and these websites are out there. And it cracked us up because you'd get a picture that somebody took of their toilet in their bathroom. And you're like, we assumed the house had a toilet.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's
Yeah,
the bathroom.
there's a close-up of
Here is
that.
the literal
Look what we have.
bathroom device. Exactly.
Check
You've
this
seen
out.
it.
We got
And
3
you're
of them, huh?
You know those block glass
has a
windows that
Yeah.
they put in bathrooms? There's like a picture of the block glass window, and there's a
block.
picture of like the shower head, and that's it. And you're like, well, there's the bathroom,
They
and
got
those
a
are just
toilet.
immediately
Sold.
off,
Yeah.
just
Sold.
immediately off the list because of photos.
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
us.
but
we
that's
didn't
a-
even go look at that house because of the photos.
see? And
Yeah.
that's the thing is how many buyers are you missing as a perspective, as a seller, especially if you're a loser doing
The people take
FISBO.
a picture of their bed and put it on there, and that's all. The only bedroom shot is like a close-up normal camera. Here's the bed with some wall color in the background. You're like, that's not going to be there.
Well, they just want you to know how big of a bed you can have in the bedroom. That's the point of
You
that.
Pro
can't even
tip.
tell that they're so up close.
There are agents out there that take their own photos.
Oh, I'm sure
with-
that are terrible.
But it gets me is
I forgot. Go
it's
ahead.
like an $800,000 house, and you're taking it with you. It's like
Disclaimer.
Even though iPhones
At
are
what-
good, they're
right. But I mean, I don't think these were taken with the latest iPhone. You know what I'm
This
saying?
is actually
The
taken with a
camera like
professional
this
camera.
big
Yeah.
that have the
This
push
is
button.
great.
And I'm just like, as a homeowner, do you look at your agent and be like, hey, I saw what you put out there. That's awful. Why don't you hire a professional?
I don't think some
saying?
people know better.
No, they don't
But
know better.
I mean,
That's
we're in
the problem.
2022 now.
They hire their
Obviously.
agent to do it, and they don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that and the other part is like, let's just be real. They hire their agent and they're not going to be wrong about it because I
Right.
have people who have hired me that are like, oh, how do you want to do this? And I'll tell them straight up, like, this is a piece of crap. I'm not going to pay for photos. Like,
Right.
we're selling an investment property. It's $50,000. It's empty. Like,
Right.
it needs a roof. But what you just said, I literally sent one of my agents the other day and he's going to hear this and crack up because I sent him, I'm like, go take these pictures. I have to get it in the MLS. But like, just so we can get it in the MLS because Chris can't get there till X day.
Right.
And that's how serious I am. I'll list my property and still wait for you.
Right.
So I listed the property with these photos knowing I was got, 24, 36 hours before his come. So his come, and I forward him to the agent and I'm like, hey, co-listing agent, can you drop these in there and replace the ones that are there? And he's the one who took the original ones. He texted me last night and he's like, oh my God, these are amazing. He's like, mine are horrible. I text back, I'm like, he's a professional photographer.
Right.
He was like, yeah, you can tell.
And that's what I'm saying. That people that take them, even agents, homeowners, they don't realize how bad they are.
And he's an agent who has taken, with a professional camera, brought a professional camera out there. He's not terrible, but it's just when this becomes, especially you, it's a niche for you, and you've gotten good at it.
You can have a professional camera and still not take professional.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like the old saying, the meal gets cooked, like, oh, this is a fantastic dish. What oven do you use? And it's like,
nothing to do with
it doesn't have to do with the oven,
Yeah.
it's kind of
That's
like.
what I did when I sold my house for sub
Yeah.
honor. We had a super nice camera. It's
bringing up bad memories again.
Super expensive lenses, everything else that I had bought over the years and took
Right.
them, but they're still not as good from an adjustment standpoint and a fine tuning of the settings. Because I'm like, auto mode looks good.
Right, yeah. Put it on P.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Those new
Click.
Polaroid cameras that
Right.
you can get that you push.
Yeah,
the
because
setting.
taking photos is one thing, but there's a whole lot that goes on with post editing that a lot of people don't know about, and how much time it goes into that.
That's what
I
you
go
pay
out and
for.
I probably on average shoot
That's what you pay for.
5 or 6 homes a day, but I have to spend 5 or 6 hours a night editing everything I shot. And so, when I shoot for agents, they'll be getting emails at 11, 12, 1 in the morning.
Mine was at 2. Mine was at 2 o'clock in the morning. But we have a child we both have toddlers, so I assume when he sends me that, I'm like, well, Grayson must have been causing some trouble.
Right. No, I'm up every night,
Editing.
usually editing, sending out stuff. So
Well, it was a beautiful experience having you on the show because I've wanted to have you on the show anyways, and I needed a reason. So that call was great.
Done.
But to be totally forthcoming with all of you, I really honestly will not used another photographer since the day I crossed paths with Chris White. So if you're in the Central Arkansas area, make sure you reach out for his contact information or find it in the copy of the show. And also, talking about post-production, we better let our crew go because they're going to be editing this for like the next 12 hours. So reach out if you guys have any information or questions related to the cases that we've covered on the show this morning. We will happily cover your messy real estate case as well. So you guys have anything to rule on other than you should never buy a house sight unseen without
And don't take your own
actually
photos.
looking
Yes.
at it? We'll let him do that.
done.
Exactly.
There you go.
You want to
So
timer it
what your ruling is, don't take your own photos.
Absolutely.
and hire him to do it instead.
Done.
Yes. Done. All right. You know where to find all the best bad news in real estate, which is on I Hate Real Estate, the podcast. I'm JB Taylor with Kendel Grooms and our special guest, Chris White. Thank you for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button and we'll see you on the next episode of I Hate Real Estate. See you later, haters.